Здравствуйте, уважаемые друзья! Я Азат Мухамедов, и сегодня у нас в гостях представитель Детского фонда ООН в Туркменистане, госпожа Шахинь Нилофер. Госпожа Нилофер, здравствуйте. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Thank you for coming to our studio today. Ms. Nillofer, how long are you working for United Nations projects?
Firstly, thank you for having me here in your studio. With UNICEF, I've been for last 10 years, and in Turkmenistan for last 2 years since 2016 August.
What's the global mission of UNICEF?
As you know, UNICEF works for children, more particularly children and women. As we say, mother and child, and we cover issues of health and education and inclusion, which includes gender and disability and other forms of vulnerability. We also work on issues of protection, what we call as a child protection, but also borders on social protection. We do also work a lot on generating data for children, which is a very important area globally on data availability and data reliability and data credibility. So we work with the governments, host governments wherever we are in. And everything that we do for children is guided by the International Convention on the Rights of the Children, which is called CRC. So CRC is almost like our, is our Bible, is the premise, the bedrock of everything that we do. So we work in development setting. UNICEF works in 190 countries. We also work in humanitarian settings, humanitarian of two natures. One is to do with, wherever there is a disaster, natural disaster, but also in situations of conflicts, like for example in Iraq, Yemen, Syria, in Rohingyas in Bangladesh now, in Myanmar. So wherever there are conflicts, UNICEF also extends its humanitarian support in order to protect the children and women. And yes, so primarily we have a very broad mission, and we have the mandate to work on children, and many UN agencies also, as far as their mandates are concerned, also contribute to addressing issues of children and women in this country. Yeah.
Every year UNICEF receives over $5 billion from different governments and private donors, companies. Can you please tell us what are the main projects that these funds are spent to?
Let me clarify. There are two big key, funding. What we say is financing options. Financing, because it is much more broader than the funds. One is to do with our regular resources, which is called RR, and these are primarily from the government's contribution to sustain some of our core development programs, as I mentioned, on health, education and protection, inclusion and other supports on ground in countries. So this could be your governments, this could be your foundations, this could be your private sector funding, financing options, and this could also be national committees. We do have certain national committees, and they also fund you. But wherever there is a situation of a humanitarian crisis in the world over, there is an additional accelerated appeal for financing the humanitarian crisis on ground, because it calls for much more bigger size given the volume of response that you have to deliver on ground. So depending on the intensity, depending on the nature, for example, tsunami that happened, that was unprecedented across the Asian continent, particularly South Asia and East Asia. So which is beyond the means of UNICEF or beyond the means of the government's concern. There, there is a mass appeal that is made by UN, by UNICEF, and that's where you have a separate part which is to do with the humanitarian response. Now you have similar situations, unfortunately a more protracted humanitarian crisis in Syria, as I mentioned, Iraq, in Yemen, and many more countries across the world if you look around. So primarily UNICEF ensures every dollar, every penny that is being raised for is being made accountable in terms of delivering results for children.
Question about yourself. Why have you chosen this way? On which part of your life you made this decision that you want to live helping children all over the world?
Well, you made me reflect. Let me think over it, and yeah, it wasn't a designed plan to opt for development sector. I've done my master's and my doctorate on issues of gender, especially on status of Muslim women in the context of geopolitical situations, changing situation. So I was designed to be an academic per se, because I come from a conventional family, and the conventional family's expectations that you undertake a charted path, a much more known, what they call as a secured lines. But this happened accidental. My getting into development sector, I'm come from a small town in India where we had a situation of communal rights, and that was the time when I was exposed to and confronted to the situations on ground, especially children and women who were made to stay in a do camps, and the situations of sanitations, education and health. That was the time when I got exposed with some of the development organizations who had come down to provide relief support to people, and then I got interested. I started reading about these agencies and organizations while I was doing my PhD at that point in time. So that is when I decided that this was my calling, to do something about children and women in particular. And my academic field, because I had done sociology and I was already doing my PhD, was a logical extension to get into development, because in development it is all about ensuring essential social services are delivered to the people who deserve most, who are the most vulnerable, and this is what development was supposed to be. So that is how I entered into development sector way back in 1991 while I was still finishing my PhD, and there was no looking back from then onwards. So I'm very much here. I've done all kinds of work, right from the grassroots work to where I am here today. So I wouldn't have been the person that I am today if I was not exposed to in the development sector.
Let's come to Turkmenistan and your work here. According to the official website of UNICEF Turkmenistan, the mortality rate of children under 5 years old has been decreased something like 40 or 41%. I've made a mathematics over the past 20 years in Turkmenistan. What's the merit of UNICEF in this rate decrease? So what have UNICEF done in the last 20 years?
Firstly, I must acknowledge that before SDGs came, there was Millennium Development Goals, right? And before MDGs came into being, when the international community got together and ratified the MDGs, UNICEF has been working with other agencies like WHO and UNFPA with their respective mandate. We've been working with this government, Turkmenistan, since 1992 onwards. And as you rightly pointed out, incrementally over the years, and more particularly the accelerated actions that were taken during MDGs, and now there has been an incremental reduction in infant mortality rate. And if you ask me what the change has been and how the change happened, yes. So one must understand the change was not overnight, and change did not trigger because of one factor. There are various levels that work needed to happen. First, the most important thing, the acknowledgement there is an issue at hand. How do we ensure every child born into this world, into this planet, survives and has an opportunity to healthy growing, growth and healthy development. So that's the acceptance that there is a need to do something in order to ensure every boy and a girl born in this country must have an opportunity to survive and grow healthy. The government, together with UNICEF, we've identified at various levels what needs to be done. One is to do with what are the causes, understanding the analysis of why there has been a high mortality rate when we started. So, and one gotten into a point that it was not to do anything with rocket science. It is more or less to do with ensuring safe methods of conducting delivery. And it is as simple as finding out that the birth attendants, which are nurses, midwives, and ensuring doctors available, women have an access to health services, the yes. health centers, and every woman should have a certain standard protocols, which is your pre and post services, prenatal and postnatal, which is like you should have minimum 4 prenatal services until the child is delivered and postnatal services. If you're able to early enough alert and diagnose the condition of the child growing in a mother's womb, then you're able to address some of the issues right on time. So there was a lot of emphasis that was given when a woman enters into the health center to take care of the growth of the child, monitoring the growth of the infant in the mother's womb. So that's one area where prenatal, and it's not just enough that a child or an infant has been born at the health center, but also postnatal, after the delivery, what kind of a care has been undertaken and provided for, that the child is able to pass through certain critical stages of his or her life until the child is able to survive and grow. So that was one important thing. And second thing was about ensuring both the necessary technology, knowledge, capacity of the health personnel, the medical professionals. So the UNICEF has been providing capacity investment training on the birth attendants and the doctors and medical professionals, exposing to them new technology and on safe delivery method. So therefore that was one important area. As you were mentioning, there's not one important trigger. There's several factors that was taken into consideration until we reach a point where we have the data to say what was the benchmark yesterday and what is the benchmark today. So for example, like we produce these reports called the indicators on children's growth, health, education, nutrition, protection, and working with the State Statistics Committee, with the different ministries of concern, we undertake surveys, and we have a signature survey called Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey, which is a global, household random samplified surveys that we undertake. So with this, the governments have the confidence and are able and are aware where the status is and how the reduction has happened over the period of years. So I must acknowledge and congratulate also for the governments to have reposed faith on us, and to partner with us on this journey until we have reached a stage. The business is not over as yet. We still have the countdown to 2030. We are, in 2018, and 2030 is close by. So we need to bring it less than 20% as the benchmark for mortality, infant mortality or child mortality for that matter. But nonetheless, the fact that we have made this progress as of date itself is the biggest achievement, but that doesn't mean that we become complacent. So I think the urgency is still as relevant as it was before.
So what's the budget of UNICEF for Turkmenistan for this year, if it's not secret information, of course, and what projects are already done by UNICEF for 2018, and which projects are you planning to do till the end of this year?
Right. Firstly, we do have a 5-year country programs which is signed with the government of Turkmenistan, and this is normally the common template across the world, that we have a 5-year country program action plan. This is an agency country program which has been signed. Over and above, we have partnership framework for development, which is UN development assistance framework. So while as UNICEF we provide this support to the government as an agency, but we are also part of United Nations delivering as one. And so therefore we have a framework which is called, as I mentioned, Development Assistance Framework, UN. In this country we call it as a Partnership Framework for Development. Partnership is very important because it is about together. And while the accountability rests with the host government to deliver on, for example, on the SDGs, but it is together we provide technical assistance more importantly. Now coming to the budgets, again we do have a projections for 5 years, and for example, it's at over 1 million for Turkmenistan, but the most important thing is not about how much money we're bringing on the table. The most important thing is about quality technical assistance. Turkmenistan, as far as the World Bank estimate, is an upper middle income country. So it is not about the money that we bring on the table, as I mentioned. So since 2005, if I'm not wrong, the government has picked up 100% financing of procurement of vaccines, and it also finances floor fortification. If you remember, I mentioned about anemia is one important area of concern, and in order to address undernutrition and anemia among adolescents and young people and young girls and women, one of the approaches to address is through floor fortification. And government provides finances towards floor fortification program, but also it picks up through 100% financing of procuring vaccines through UNICEF global agencies. We do have a long-term agreements with many vendors, and we provide procurement services to the government, which is cost effective for the government to procure from UNICEF, and it is also reliable quality vaccines and on-time delivery that we undertake. So it cuts down on the logistics challenges for the government to go and approach individual procurement services or agencies towards this. So this is one of the supply procurement is one of the key services also that UNICEF undertakes in many governments that we work with. The point that I would like to mention to sum up your question about financing is about something that is not monetized and something that is not really visible, is about providing hand-holding, accompanied technical quality support to the government at 3 levels. One is at the policy level. looking at whether the policies are fit for the purpose for children and women as far as international standards are concerned, because member states have signed up to UN and to the UN obligations. So we provide technical support into if there are existing policies that need amendments, that we work with the government on relevant fields where children and women are concerned, or in helping developing and formulating new policies, or preparing government for the treaty body hearings, for example on the CRCs or CEDAW or on CRPD. So UN and UNICEF together, we provide government the support. The second biggest volume of the work is around capacity development, helping government with policies, strategies, on implementation, operational plans, on investment cases, and undertaking capacity development to its professionals, and giving them an exposure to the best practices in other countries, the whole area of knowledge management, so that they are better able to implement and execute the strategies and policies and program. The third area is about advocacy and partnership and conscientization, which is a wide range of work with, for example, with parliamentarians, with ombudsperson's office, with young people in this country, and various other platforms, private sector, for example, the related bilaterals. So we kind of reach out to them and conscientize them, have policy dialogue with them on issues of concerns of children and women in this country.
What channels do you use here in Turkmenistan to spread the information to children, for their mothers?
Normally we do use whatever the available channels are, resources are, as you know. So one is working with the host government. We make sure that every investment that we make at the national level, at the state level, does not stay there. So it needed to go to atrabs and vilayats and at the provincial level. So we make sure that some of the key critical investments in capacity development are also undertaken at vilayats level, so that there is an opportunity of taking it forward. We do have working with other UN systems and UNICEF on its own, reaching out through various advocacy opportunities, various events that we undertake, whether it is Environmental Day or I'm talking about climate change to children. So we do ensure when the summer camp which the government organizes for the children, we do reach out to the children there, and we do have scheduled time for working with the parliamentarians during their off days, and making sure that the parliamentarians in their responsibilities understand as a parliamentarian what are the CRC convention talks about, what are the accountabilities in their respective constituencies, what they needed to deliver. And channels like yours and the broadcast, national broadcast, televisions, or we do reach out on various events and programs. And through print mediums, we do have our different publications. Our annual report is on our website. It is available to the country, to everyone globally, and we make sure, if we're really serious about our informations and messages should reach down, then we make sure that's translated into Turkmen and wherever appropriate Russian as well.
Last month, July 20th, UNICEF Deputy Regional Director for Europe and Central Asia, Philippe Corey, officially launched the Regional Nutrition Partnership Platform for Central Asia. What does this mean for ordinary people?
Philippe Corey is a Deputy Regional Director who recently joined the ICAR, the East and Central Asia region. We're very fortunate to have him. We've had people from other UN agencies. It was the first time when it was a joint initiative by UN agencies like World Food Programme, WHO, UNICEF, FAO, Food and Agriculture Organizations. They all came together and deliberated together with the respective national governments in CIS countries, and Caucasus included, where nutrition as an agenda was something which was very central to everything else the countries do on development. Essentially, for common people, it means that nutrition is pretty much in the agenda of the government. There is a commitment and a political will to ensure there is necessary financing, necessary programs to address as much as possible before the 2030 strikes. So this is kind of a very critical to all the CIS countries, having signed up early newborn action plan to make sure UN agencies, as I mentioned, and the respective governments deliver on an operational plan, having formed this nutrition platform in the region, and subsequently the operation plans will identify accelerated call to action to address the issues of nutrition in the region.
There are over 180 Goodwill ambassadors of UNICEF all around the world. Who are they? Who are these Goodwill ambassadors, and what do they do? And how a man can start being a Goodwill ambassador of UNICEF? So what are their functions?
The Goodwill ambassadors are basically drawn in from various walks of life who have made a name for themselves and who normal people look up to. Yeah, they could be an athlete, a sports personality. They could be a literature in various fields of film artist or director or actor, whether it is Hollywood or Bollywood, anywhere. But they've really made carved a name for themselves and are a role model for people. Have a large mass following and people look up to it. The very reason that we engage Goodwill ambassador, because every word they speak is being heard. It's not enough to talk. There should be an audience to listen to. And there's almost a gospel of truth, right? So it's very important to engage in these critical concerns that Goodwill ambassadors are able to demonstrate that it is important that we inculcate a healthy lifestyle. For example, we quit smoking, responsible driving, for example, parenting, how do you take care of the children? As fathers, as mothers, how do we make sure that we spend quality time in the growing up years of the children? If the celebrities are able to role model and talk about it and feel great pride in helping in homemaking, in washing dishes, in washing clothes, respecting women, treating women with equality, the rest of the world is watching them, right?
Yes.
So if they're able to inculcate what Shah Rukh Khan is saying or what Angelina Jolie is saying, then there is a value addition to everything that we do as UN or any other agencies for that matter. So it's not just about UN engaging the celebrities, it's also about various governments have started seeing the value of engaging the Goodwill ambassadors. Now there is a huge responsibilities on the Goodwill ambassadors themselves. You asked about what are the qualities. It's not just enough to be a great sports personality for that matter, Messi for example. But in your personal life, you should be able to lead the life, walk the talk. You can't be seen having drugs and be talking about drug addiction, stop drugs, taking drugs. So in your personal life also, there's a huge responsibility of modeling a responsible behavior. And that is all about selection of a Goodwill ambassador goes through a very rigorous process. It's not about somebody who's famous on the social media overnight, but you do a clear, thorough process of identifying, selecting, look through the personal life stories of these people, how they've come this far, their individual struggles, from being a child soldier to a footballer for that matter. And we do a great amount of discretion and in understanding their life stories, which is inspiring and admirable for the rest of the world to follow.
Do they do this? Goodwill ambassadors just for goodness, global goodness? For free, or do they earn something from UNICEF for this work?
No, for a greater common good. Of course, the Goodwill ambassadors lend their time and lend their voice. It's not a paid, job at all. It's not a job at all for that. They voluntarily,
It's their own desire.
Yes, you approach a Goodwill ambassador and say that we would be very interested if you can lend your voice and your time visiting. For example, you must have seen some of these Goodwill ambassadors really travel to the remotest of the locations in many countries, spend time with them, understand, and many of them have come back, more humbled, and it has made such a powerful impact on their own personal life. So therefore, UNICEF, and I'm sure it's true with all UN agencies, doesn't pay for the services that they render for the greater common good of the global humanity and mankind.
Approximately 1/3 of all income that UNICEF receives from donors comes from private donors, private companies. For example, we know that Catalan football club Barcelona transfers annually £1.5 million every year to UNICEF. Can you please give other examples? Which companies, like big famous companies, are donors of UNICEF?
Yes, of course, there are far too many private sector funding. It's difficult for me to recollect and and list all of them. But as far as I know, the big ones that comes into my mind, because I worked in India, and they've been one of the biggest donors for us. And this was IKEA Foundation, and also Lego for that matter. We had PNG, just to name few, Pampers for that matter. But there are also many family-owned foundations, more prominently Melinda and Gates, and there's so many who are unseen. Basically, they very privately donate for the cause of the children and do not necessarily want, to be more visible. There are individual donors, those who are steady every month from the salaries also contribute. So we would like to value these unseen, small, steady donors who on a monthly basis pay, and not just about who pays the big bill, right? So it's very important for UNICEF to value these individual donors, retired people, and who have the will and the heart to do something. A humanitarian crisis, for example, in Yemen or in Syria or in Iraq or in Myanmar, moves them. When they're watching TV with the family over a family dinner, and something strikes them and they want to do something about it, then they reach out to UNICEF. So this is something that we as UNICEF values, their empathy for making a difference in the lives of our children and bringing back a smile is something that we very much value.
So what about Turkmenistan? Is Turkmenistan in the list of UNICEF donors?
No, Turkmenistan gets its regular core program support. We don't have private donors supporting us. We do have a technical partners who we do work with them. We have had some discussions with Lego Foundations last year, but it hasn't really materialized for now. We do partner with bilaterals in order to bring the technology into the country. For example, we're working with the Embassy of Israel to see some of the advanced knowledge practices on maternal and child health that can be brought into this country. Similarly, we're working with the Red Crescent Society. We're looking at what are the knowledge that are available on climate change, adaptation, environment and energy. Working with Canadian, for that matter, the government of Canada on the local initiative on introducing climate change curriculum in schools. So we do reach out to best practices, what is available in other countries. But Turkmenistan, as an upper middle income country, has the means and wherewithal to look into domestic resource revenue for committing for social sector program and financing. What is important is leveraging partnership to deliver on results for children. So it's not just about somebody giving you money to undertake a certain programs, but it is about getting the technical know-how. For example, if a mobile service provider can partner with us in delivering a certain message on child care, that itself is something that we would like to leverage with.
Can you please tell us how these 5-year programs are developed? How UNICEF decides on which projects to spend the funds, on which not? Like, how do you develop these programs?
There are various processes. First and foremost, agencies like us, we're primarily here to work together with the government to support government, build the capacity to deliver on the national priorities. So that's the kind of the premise, to help government deliver on the national priorities, and our programs are therefore aligned to help deliver government on the national priorities. There is a global process that is called, globally at the headquarters, they have a strategic plans, and these are 3 years in nature. But countries primarily are expected to align their programs based on the context, based on the needs on the ground. So therefore, for us, what is important is what are the priorities for the government, national priorities for the government. And our 5-year programs are therefore aligned to the national priorities of the government. Now, for having signed the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, the government has signed up to the SDGs, is one of the very few countries, globally, first few countries to have signed up. Now, the national programs of the government of Turkmenistan are about also delivering in its commitment on SDGs. Now, our 5-year programs are pretty much aligned with the SDGs to help government to execute its commitment on SDG implementations. So therefore, it would not be an understatement to say that the relevance and the context and the needs of the country's programs are pivotal to our 5-year programs and plans.
UNICEF is the world's largest provider of ready-to-use therapeutic food. I'll quote, it's a high protein paste that can bring a malnourished child back to health within weeks. Can you please tell what kind of food is this, how UNICEF produced this, so what contains the ingredients?
This is called ready-to-eat foods. It's a high on therapeutic content and high on nutrition. This is normally not, not prescribed, generally across. This is primarily for children who are severely malnourished, not for mild and moderate undernutrition.
For example, in some African countries.
For example, in a country which is reeling under humanitarian crisis, or countries which are very high on underdevelopment and poverty, underdeveloped countries where the real issues of availability of food, hunger, deprivation, poverty situations. And it is very, very difficult and challenging for the child to lead a normal life if the child has fallen into the bracket of severe malnourishment. So in order to help the child to gradually, eventually fall back into moderate and mild classification and categories, we have to induce, we have to provide the RUTF, ready to eat food, which is through high energy biscuits and high nutrition content biscuits. So this is provided under very strict medical conditions. It's not prescribed over the counter kind of a thing, and we believe countries which are developing and underdeveloped countries, there are locally appropriate, available means of addressing mild and moderate undernutrition. Like for example, if you have minor millets, in India I know we used to have several cereals and minor millets. I'm sure here as well, like you have maize, you have various forms of locally available cereals here, which can be made into baby food and provided for. They are very safe, they are less on on cost, they're cost effective, they can be easily made, and through safe technology you can make baby foods which are from products and available within the countries. This is what UNICEF normally prescribes for, and do not necessarily straight away go for ready to available therapeutic food as a means to address.
On November 23rd, 2014, you have tweeted this sentence on your Twitter. Is the world today a better place for children? Mm-hmm. Question. I don't remember the answer, but I wanted to hear your answer for today.
Mm-hmm. Inshallah, and I really hope I can continue to be very optimistic. By the way, you've done a very good research, and going back to my Twitter days when I was this was in my previous posting in Bhutan, and yes, I continue to remain ever optimistic, ever hopeful for all children everywhere, whether the children from developing countries. I'm sure with an increased attention world over on children, on the rights of the children, on the need to protect them, on the need to provide better health, better education, better quality of life. It's not just the responsibility of the governments per se. I think it's also about every caregivers, as parents, as mothers, as fathers, as elders, as teachers. It is very, very important in today's troubled times to make sure right from the child is born into the family until he or she is able to be a responsible adult to go into the world on her or his own merit. It's very, very important to provide safe environment. And so therefore the responsibility to provide safe environment and to provide services is for everyone's business. So I do hope my next tweet will be, it is a better place for children, and I am also, like you, looking forward to that next tweet.
And the last question of our official part of our interview. Mm-hmm. 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a post on official page of UNICEF on LinkedIn, and there was a message. I'll quote this: "The prevention of HIV transmission from mother to child is one of the world's greatest public health achievements. Still, babies are born with HIV every day." My question is this: in this very high-tech world, very, very developed world in biotechnics, in technologies, for example, we know how to read DNA code, we are using nanorobots in blood vessels, I don't know, we are almost printing organs, and why this very high technological world with billions of dollars cannot prevent HIV development. Still, I mean, it's 2018, but still children are born with HIV. Why this happens? It's my own question.
Yeah. No, you forgot about mentioning AI, artificial intelligence as well, and
also
and new citizen Sophia having got
yes.
Citizenship recently. Yes, it is. First and foremost, it is a preventable thing. So therefore, all the measures that has been undertaken so far and still, underway, not just about making sure millions and billions of dollars being made available to address the transmission of HIV from mother to children is not about not enough money. It is also a lot about the issue about stigma. It is about discrimination. It is about practices. It is about making knowledge and information available. It is about reaching out to where it is needed most. Simple understanding and awareness of how does one gets HIV/AIDS. What needs to be done and what must be done to avoid and to to have this understanding and awareness about what enables the transmission. So prevention at the very first step, and an awareness about that, and providing necessary information, tools, knowledge, wherewithal, and a stigma-free environment where you can walk into the health center and get yourself, tested for HIV and walk out of the health center without necessarily being labeled is a very important step. So I think in many of these countries where the prevalence rate is still very high, this seems to be still a very major concern, where it is not seen as any other normal disease that needed to be treated. Instead of discounting the person concerned, you need to make sure that you're rallying around and providing necessary support, information, awareness, and knowledge about HIV/AIDS. So it is not so much about containing the transmission per se. It is about what needed to be done to make sure prevention is the first step in itself.
So do you believe that one day will come when humanity will completely destroy this HIV and AIDS viruses?
Well, I'm looking up to the scientific community as well for the various developments in modern technology and modern science. And but as a common person, I can say is when is about prevention, is about taking the first step to ensure you're not getting into a situation where it is not safe. So if each and every one of us are able to understand that, and and we are as adults are able to provide this information, knowledge, and awareness, as simple as sex education in schools, we're able to talk freely to our children in our homes and families that say no to drugs and what are the safe behavior, responsible behavior. I'm sure we'll be able to combat and address this menace for sure. Yeah.
Okay, the official part of our interview is over, and now we'll get to the personal questions. It's a Marcel Proust questionnaire. Let's go on. Now, these questions are directly to you, your personality. First one, what's your favorite color?
Blue. Didn't you see him wearing blue today?
I'm seeing.
Blue.
Also,
the UN color.
The flag,
yes.
UN flag, yes.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Goodness. What kind of goodness in a man? Virtuous, yes.
All right. I think very simple expectations. Being honest and just being yourself. So that addresses half of the world's problem.
If not yourself, who would you like to be?
Undoubtedly a photographer, a traveler.
Qualities that you most appreciate in a man.
Yes, same as I mentioned, simplicity and honesty, and just being, the man, one who respects and treats women with equality, loving, intelligent. Yeah, I can go on, but let me stay with this.
What about qualities of women? Same also?
Yes, I think the same, but of course there's something very different from being men, which is about the feminine quality. I'm a feminist for sure, and being a feminine quality doesn't takes away the feminist in you. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So I think it's nice to be presentable. It's nice to love the way that you want to be. Have wings to fly. So these are something that I would also want for you to enjoy. Having born as a girl in this world is to be not just treated with respect and equality, but have the opportunity to live the life that you want to be.
The ability that you don't have but would like to have.
That's a good question.
Maybe even fantastic ability.
Well, I probably would like to learn a little more about how to handle the technicalities of the camera, and be a person like Vitaly for that. Yeah, I'd like to do something about direction as well. Yeah.
What's your favorite drink and dish?
Well, lemonade for sure, and a dish. There are far too many.
Turkmen dish?
Shashlik.
Shashlik.
Shashlik for sure. And I'm a very conservative when it comes to trying new things, but of course there's far too many. I can't go on. And, yeah. But I like good food, and and I like spicy hot food.
As all Indians.
As all Indians do. Yes.
Yes. If not in your country, in India, in which country would you like to live?
Say countries, please. I like to be in Greece. I like to be in Morocco. I like to be in Turkey, and where it has an history and culture, and in Central Asia for that matter, and
your favorite activity during your free time?
Photography.
What's your main disadvantage?
Well, I think there are several. I'm very outspoken. Sometimes you are needed to be restrain yourself and be more. I wouldn't say diplomatic, because that's not something that I enjoy. Being more diplomatic, but as situations demands, you needed to be very. As an outspoken, of course, you're very blunt about it. So I needed to be. I need to learn, do a little more on how I should organize my thoughts and speak later. I probably speak first and organize my thoughts later. It's kind of trained that way. And of course, that's pretty much one. And I can, like as now I am, can be more descriptive. I need to be, a little more a little more focused in my communications, and that's something that I feel I need to do. And at times I'm an impulsive shopper, and it's something that I've become a lot more better over the years. But I've been always reminded by my daughter to be more minimalist, and I hope she's listening to this interview, and I am getting there soon. And
she's in India?
She's in India now, but soon she's going for her higher studies. Yeah. So basically this is all I can think about it.
What is happiness?
happiness. Happiness is about, it's a very inner thing, you know, state of mind for me. Being happy with yourself, being happy with situation, a nice living in the moment is about happiness. Being in the moment is about happiness. Of course, certain variables do add to that happiness, that you're in a nice place, nice environment, company of good people, positive people. As in any situation, as I walk into, I like people who are more, outgoing. Leave your stress at the back and still be enjoying the moment and being happy. So a lot is about state of the mind, really is about, but that's not being real, right? Each one of us go through a certain dark side of your life, and then that kind of triggers. There's always a stress. Children not come home to pick up the child from the school. I need to complete a certain thing by the deadline. All the stress also adds up to it, but you're able to manage and make a distinction between transactional nature of the stress and more permanent nature of your inner feeling, and you're able to make a sync between this. Then of course then you're a sadhu, or you're a mahatma, or you're something. But for me, happiness is about being in the moment and feeling happy about things generally.
So what do you consider to be the greatest misfortune?
Generally, or?
Generally.
I think something that really disturbs me is about the current times. And when I say current time, I'm talking about the geopolitical situations in the world all over. There are many countries who are reeling under conflicts. And something that really bothers is about children who have who do not have the childhood per se. They've grown far ahead in life and times. They're missing out on innocence. They're missing out on living with their families and their parents. They're far more exposed to harmful, dangerous situations all around them for no rhyme or reason, for no fault of their having born into this world. That really bothers me. There are many children who are being dislocated, uprooted, because all about geography, all about boundaries, all about turf, all about what belongs to us and what belongs to them. The increasing polarizations of the current time is something that really bothers me. Everywhere, in every society that we live with, the increasing greed for power, the increasing greed for possessions is unable to see that the future is at stake for children. So for me, this is a greatest misfortunes of current time, where we are not able to really understand the simplest of the thing of living in harmony with each other and making sure that children have a future, and our future is something that we need to invest in today.
If it was possible, with whoever lived on Earth you would like to meet and communicate? It can be anyone who died, from the past.
Right. Well, I've had the great fortune of meeting with Mother Teresa when I was in school, and I think she made a very lasting impact on me and what I am today. So that the empathetic self in me, for sure. I also know the two people who could have really made a difference in today's time. One is Mahatma Gandhi, who always preached non-violence and unifying the world over, and of course Nelson Mandela. They are the two epitome of world peace. And I think whatever the ideology has been, is still so very relevant than ever before in today's time. I wish I could go back in time and dream of spending time with them, you know.
And the last question, if you had the opportunity to give yourself a 20-year-old young girl only one message, what would you tell her?
Have wings and fly. Yeah, I would tell her just keep dreaming high and have wings and fly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Наше интервью подошло к концу. У нас в гостях была представитель Детского фонда ООН в Туркменистане, госпожа Шахинь Нилофер. Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you. Thank you.